Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members and colleagues. Councillor George Mayer.
Here.
I have an apology from Councillor Ian Grant. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. I have apologies from Councillors John McFadden, Maureen Mackay, Helen Coffey and John Campbell. Councillor Jim Todd.
Here.
Councillor Sally Cogley. Councillor John Bell.
Here.
And Councillor Elaine Dinwoodie.
Here.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Julie. I'd just like to welcome the elected members back to the Governance Scrutiny Committee following the summer recess, particularly the new members, Gordon Jenkins, Jim Todd and Maureen Mackay, although Maureen's put her apologies in this morning. So welcome, he's doing and back to work. And I'd always like to express my appreciation to Barry, who's chair, and Councillors Claire Leach and Jackie Todd, who have been on the committee for the last 4.5 years or so and have moved on to pastures new. So if we move on to exclusion of the public. So we can take that as read. Declarations of interest. Julie, if you have anything.
Yep, going by the agenda, I don't think there is anything, but across two members, if there's any declarations that you would like to intimate at this point in the meeting.
I don't see anyone, so we'll just move on. The previous minutes of the meeting held on 17th of June. Would someone like to move these as a correct record?
George, I'll move the minutes as a correct record.
Thanks, Elaine.
Did you hear that?
Aye. Yep, I got that loud and clear, thanks. And have a seconder?
I'll second that, convener.
Thanks, John. And any other matters arising? Are there any matters arising from the previous minutes? So just run through them. Take page 1. Page 2. Page 3. And then 4. 5. And then 6. There's no matters arising, no questions. That's fine, thank you. If we can move on to the next item on the agenda, and it's Ian Tuff who's going to present this report on the complaints, the annual report of complaints. Thank you. Ian.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. Members will be familiar with the report. This is the annual report that comes in front of the Governance and Scrutiny Committee and presents the performance around our complaints management over the last year or over 2021. Just in the background to the report, we note in there that the national model for complaints handling was recently revised by the Ombudsman, with all local authorities required to adopt and implement the new model CHP with effect from the 1st of April 2021. And we've been doing that over the last year and preparing for that. But for the purposes of today's discussion, then the annual performance report covers the preceding year of 2020-21. Performance information is presented, which in the report relates to the height of the pandemic as well, and clearly, of course, many of our services were impacted by that. Complaints continued to be received throughout that period, though, and we've managed through our established processes, and we've continued to learn from complaints even through that pandemic. So some of the information that's contained within the annual report that's attached will cover that pandemic response as well. So in paragraph 8, Chair, and we mentioned there that 2021 is our final year, as a mention of reporting under this current performance framework from the SPSO. Future reporting on the revised CHP will be based on a new suite of national performance measures, which are, at the time of writing this report, currently being finalised to support implementation of the new model CHP for next year's reporting purposes. In addition to presenting the complaints performance data for the reporting period relating to complaints received by the Council, the performance report also provides a summary of complaints about the Council that were received and considered by the Ombudsman during the same period, and I'll touch on that as I go through the appendix. We also include some information around our continuous improvement agenda, and at paragraph 12 we note in there that we've had the practice in relation to complaints handling itself. A review of our procedures was undertaken in 2021, and so we've strengthened our arrangements over the last year, with changes made and identified to ensure continued compliance with the revised national model CHP, and particular improvements have been introduced in relation to staff training, awareness raising on complaints handling, and the recording and reporting of complaints. Turning then to the appendix, Chair, which has the detail of the performance for that 2021 year. I wouldn't propose to go through the whole thing. There's a lot of information in there for members, but I was going to pick out a couple of the key performance measures. So at page 20 of your papers, paragraph 26, we note there at indicator 4, this is the indicator that shows the average time in working days for responses to complaints. Our complaints procedure split into 3 main sections, so stage 1, stage 2 and escalated. For stage 1 complaints, they are complaints that are dealt with at frontline resolution, as we call it. Our target for completion of them is 5 days, and you'll see in the last 3 columns of the table at paragraph 27 the current position for where we are with the average working days to respond to complaints. So stage 1, as I said, target is 5 days. We're just sitting above that at 5.4. but that's the best performance we've had since we've been recording this. At stage 2, which is a 20-day target, then we are well below that at 18.5 days. And for escalated complaints, they are complaints that have been at stage 1 and then moved on to stage 2, then they're also below the target date of 20 days, sitting at 18.8. The next indicator, indicator 5 at the top of page 21, shows that same information but in a slightly different way. This is a record of the percentage of complaints at each stage. So those 5-day, 20-day 20-day targets. Then you'll see in the bottom line of the table at paragraph 28 that the percentages of those complaints that are completed within target are mentioned there as well. Again, performance has held up really strongly during the pandemic period. We had seen quite a significant burden on services to respond to complaints, and it's really positive to see that the percentages have maintained a very strong level, and actually, again, the performance has outperformed previous years there as well. The other indicator I wanted just to highlight is indicator 8, and that's, you'll find that at paragraph 31 of the attachment, and that's on page 22. And it's here that we include a summary of improvements that we've introduced in services or corporately on the back of complaints that have been received. Paragraph 33 provides some bullet points and sets out in a bit more detail just some of those particular improvements that have been made on the back of complaints being upheld or complaints that have been investigated. And lastly, Chair, I mentioned the SPSO statistics, and it's always helpful to refer to them in the wider context of complaint handling. Clearly, what's in the gift of the Council is our own arrangements for the 5-day, 20-day returns, but that doesn't stop dissatisfied customers for escalating their complaints to the SPSO. And at paragraph 37 on page 25, we include a summary there of the Ombudsman's complaints. Again, some really positive returns there for the Council. In 2020-21, only 11 complaints were escalated to SPSO, and that's the lowest level since SPSO started recording data of that nature in 2004-05. Another of the indicators that the Ombudsman collect is how many premature complaints they receive. Premature complaints are complaints that are received by the Ombudsman before they have exhausted the Council's complaints process. The Ombudsman won't entertain complaints unless they have been through the full rigour of the Council's complaints arrangements, and that figure of 2 premature complaints, 18.2% of complaints received by them is the lowest. Again, one of the best returns that we've had in that indicator. So with those comments, Chair, happy to take any questions on the annual report. Recommendations are at paragraph 2 of the covering report. Thanks again.
Thanks, Ian. It's a very good report. I think the figures are good compared, considering the difficulties that the staff were working under with COVID and whatever. But I'll throw it open to the members if they have any questions or remarks. Thank you. No, that's fine. Thanks for that, Ian. We can move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the roads maintenance repairs issues. And going to ask Kevin Braidwood from ARA to present this report. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. On the 11th of June, members, I presented to Governance and Scrutiny Committee a detailed presentation on our roads maintenance and repairs issues. Covered in that presentation was the application of the scoring matrix to determine our prioritisation for road repairs. The intention for us to take up adoption of all cycle routes within East Ayrshire, recognising that many were currently not adopted. The A77 cycle routes which were adopted, there was some discussions around that on the maintenance and cleaning of the cycle path. There was also discussion around making good defects liability periods for utility companies and for ourselves. In terms of our own works, the defect liability period is 12 months, and for utility companies is 24 months. However, the Roadworks Commissioner is looking to extend that to 6 years for utility companies, and there will be meetings with the Roadworks Commissioner at the end of October, where he will deliver a presentation on how the Code of Practice will be implemented to carry this forward. I also covered the area of artificial intelligence. We will be introducing artificial intelligence as part of ARA redesign, and that's equipment that will be fitted in our inspection vehicles. That will give us real-time details of the condition of our network rather than waiting in the biannual survey that comes in through the Scottish Roads Maintenance Survey, and will give us a greater idea of where we should be targeting our capital and revenue spend. Further discussions were held around materials as part of the pandemic. Obviously, there is a shortage of materials nationally and globally. In particular for us, it's precast concrete products, high-value electrical equipment, copper and lighting columns. However, we have a process in place to advise our suppliers and subcontractors of our programme, giving them a head start on works that will be coming forward. And obviously, there was a discussion around the need for continued funding on our road network. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll throw it open, members. But before I bring anyone else in, I'd like to point out something that they say every day is a learning day, and certainly speaking to Kevin, there was some discussion around the ratio of sort of country roads that were being resurfaced rather than streets in the towns. And Kevin pointed out that the difference is that when you're driving about in the country, it's generally a 60-mile-an-hour limit. So that has a bearing on the repairs necessary, whereas in the town it's a 30-mile-an-hour limit. So that was something that I had never appreciated before, and it's worth bearing in mind when, if you get any complaints about, you know, the country roads been done and the town roads been neglected. As I say, it was something that I didn't appreciate. Having said that, is there any other comments or questions from the members? Jim, See you waving, in you come.
Thanks, Convener. Really pleased to hear, Kevin, excuse me, and everybody else, about the spotlight that's going to go on utilities companies. It has been the bane of my life, even before I was a councillor, that a new road gets covered by the local authority, and all of a sudden a utilities company comes along to do necessary work. I accept that. But then they do a substandard job, and it always falls to the inspectors to use their time to go out and analyse the type of job that was done. And then you've got the devil's own work to try and get utilities company to come back and sort it. It's still going on at the moment. I won't name the companies, but there's 2 utilities companies that I'm actually trying to deal with to sort problems that have been done over the last couple of years. So really pleased that the spotlight is going to be on them. And the second part, Kevin, was I noticed in your presentation on the 11th of June, it was about supply of materials. Are you worried in the future with everything else going south in terms of ease of supply? I tried to get some postcrete a couple of weeks ago, couldn't get anywhere. Are you worried about the supply of materials? I do know in your note of a few weeks ago that you've got no concerns about the grit for the winter. You're well placed for that, but I just wondered about any other materials that we needed for our maintenance. Thanks very much, Convener.
Kevin, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Todd, obviously, as I had said in my presentation, precast concrete products are the issue for us at this moment, and lighting columns and high-end electrical equipment. However, we're trying to give forewarning to our suppliers and contractors, looking at our programme, seeing when we're needing this material in and giving them a heads up. I did pick up an article a couple of weeks ago from the RICS, and they believe that the supply of materials, etc., should improve by the end of this calendar year. However, I suppose we just have to closely monitor that and see. But in terms of our overall programme at the moment, we're not having a real impact on it. And in terms of the salt, we've been having salt supplies coming in over the last couple of weeks, so the barns are full. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other members, any points? Everyone quite happy? Thanks, Kevin. We'll move on then to the next report, which is the awarding of contracts. And Julie's going to take us through this report, but I think it's mainly all there in front of you. If you have any questions, I'm sure Julie will try her best to answer them. So we're moving on to that item. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Members will be familiar with this report, which is normally presented to the Governance and Scrutiny Committee, and it provides information and details of tenders which have been accepted on behalf of the Council for the period 9 April to the 19th of August. So the outcome of the tendering process in respect of each contract is shown at Appendix 1, together with anticipated contract duration times where applicable. The information has been collated from across various sections of the Council. Happy to take any questions which I can feed back to the services for a response. Chair, in terms of the recommendations, the committee is asked to note the contracts awarded during the period in question.
Thanks, Julie. Members, any questions, remarks? We move to the recommendations. Are we agreed that the recommendations be moved? Okay, that's fine, thank you. And that brings us on quickly to the final item on the agenda this morning, which is the awarding. No, sorry, it's not. We've done that one. We're on to the final measurements on the capital works contracts, and as Julie to lead on that one as well. Thanks, Julie.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Again, another regular report coming to committee. This time, this report provides information and details of final measurements of capital work contracts for the period 1 October 2020 to 31st of March 2021. Again, information on savings and overspends on particular contracts are set out in the Appendix 1. And again, the information has been taken from a range of services across the Council. And again, happy to take any questions to feedback through to the services. And Chair, again, in terms of the recommendation, the committee is asked to note the terms of this report.
Thanks, Julie. Members, we're happy to note the report. Are there any questions or remarks? Happy to note. Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of a very swift meeting. I appreciate that the agenda was rather light this morning, with us just getting sort of back into the swing of things. So thank you for your attendance, and thank you to the officials who attended this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.